Understanding the tactical benefits of a firearm is not possible without understanding all the accessories that were used for operating it. We are quite good with the age of muskets starting from the middle of the 16th century, but we lack a huge amount of information regarding the first decades of the 16th century. This early 16th century flask, what you see now, is a repro I made based on contemporary sources, so we can consider it as an experimental archaeology project. In this video I will guide you through its production, but let's start with watching it in action. And the last method is charging from the flask, but I'm not going to charge directly from the horn because that is not considered safe today. So I'm going to build in another step between the bore and the spout of the flask, which is a little brass measure. It is the same actually that you have already seen. From that into the bore. And there comes the patch with frozen hands. And the round ball. Start it. Getting dirtier. Okay, it's down. We prime. Shut the pen, blow excess powder away, and tinder stick into the hammer. And we fire. Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Capandball here, your favorite gun channel in beautiful bright Hunglish language, and Happy New Year to you because this is the first day of the year and it's a perfect day for crafting. What I would like to show you today is how to make these early 16th century powder horns. The original of this powder horn was found on the Mary Rose that sank in 1545, and we have many sources for this also in other contemporary images. Let me show you a few. The most important source I'm using is an original flask that was found on the Mary Rose, a carrack of the English Royal Navy, sank in 1545. The wreck of this ship was lifted from the seabed in 1982, with all the artifacts in it, and now it is displayed in a beautiful museum in Portsmouth. If you are interested in military history of the 16th century, this museum is well worth a visit. The powder horn lid displayed here is made from brass, and once it was certainly fitted to a cow horn. It has a valve system, meaning that the same amount of powder could be measured from shot to shot with it. The same type of powder horns are visible on the tapestries about the Battle of Pavia in 1525. The fine details of the images show the similar kind of spouts, opening keys, lid systems as the ones from the Mary Rose. We also have written Spanish sources for these flasks. The Lanzknecht soldiers on the tapestries are actually Spanish, so it is a good match. Don Pedro de la Cueva ordered 15,000 arquebuses from Juan de Hermua in Eibar in 1543. The caliber was 3/4 of a Castilian ounce, that corresponds to approximately 15.4 millimeters. All arquebuses were to be delivered with their powder horns with steel springs. Now this powder horn is a very interesting design. It has a valve. I would not say it is hard to make it, but definitely it is not a beginner's choice for making it for handcraft. But anyway, if I could learn how to make it, then probably you will be able to do so as well. So let's start this adventure. We are going to start with making this band around here. Follow me. But before starting the brass work, let's prepare the horn. Working with the horn is quite easy. First I remove the rough surfaces with a metal file. Then after trimming the opening with cutting bench saw, the surface is finished with increasingly finer grit sanding papers, and finally it is polished with a felt disc and metal polish compound. So this is where you arrive with the horn in the first phase. So all the rough spots are cleaned. It is nice and smooth. It is ready for polishing, and it is cut perfectly straight. Now the most important material I will need are copper sheets. I will be using 3 thicknesses. This one is 0.5 millimeter. This is 0.7 millimeter, and that's a 1 millimeter thick sheet. All this will be necessary for making this powder horn. So this is the design that we are going to follow. We can see that there is a bend here. There's a top of this lid, which is slightly concave, so it is not flat. I'm going to replicate that as well. The bend has 2 decorations. The first ones are easy to make. These are V-shaped notches here, but also there is a bubble groove that is running all around the circumference. This is something that I will also have to reproduce. We have a simple key here that will be quite easy to make. You can see how simple decoration it has. And also we have the valve here, or the spout, sorry, the spout, which is rolled from the same copper sheet. You can see the joints here, and you can also see it on the pictures. And this is the mechanism of the valve itself, with the sheet that is closing the other side, the bottom side of the spout, and also a very simple coil spring here that I will have to replicate. Let's start with making the upper bend from 0.5 millimeter brass sheet. The thickness is 25 millimeters. Okay. We just straighten it, and this will be enough for both the bottom bend and for the lid as well. Now we make the groove, but before making it, I have to make a tool for that. We start with clamping together 2 hardwood blocks. Like this. And I'm going to drill a hole here. Now my mandrel will be a 3 millimeter brass rod. So the hole I'm going to drill will be 3.5 millimeter, 3.5 millimeter. This is some space that I will need for the sheet to form that beautiful bubble. Let's drill the hole. Now the hole itself should be just 0.5 centimeter from the side and exactly in the center where the 2 wood blocks meet. We have the hole ready, and now we have a nice half groove here that we just have to clean a bit. Now the principle is quite simple. We put the brass sheet on top. This is a mandrel. I file down 1/2 of the original brass rod. I put it just above the groove, and I put another hardwood block on top. And if I compress this in the vise, it will push that little groove into the metal sheet. Now starting it is a bit tricky. You must be careful that the metal sheet, the top of the metal sheet is in flush with the top of the wood block. And you make sure that the little mandrel that will put the imprint into the metal is at the right position on both sides. If you do the first one properly, then it will be your guide. So let's try it. Okay, so this is what we are after. And now we have a nice groove. Let's fit it to the horn. And now the job is quite simple. I will just roll it on the mouth of the powder horn. Nice and tight. Make sure that the overlapping of the two ends is somewhere close to the top of the horn. We're going to mark it here. And I will mark the end of the overlapping part. The overlapping should be around 5 millimeters. And I also make it another 1 or 2 millimeters smaller, so when I replace it, it will be much more tight. What I don't need, I will cut off. The way it is joined, this is actually quite simple. I'm going to drill a 3 millimeter hole on the overlapping part, and I'm going to run this metal sheet from 0.7 millimeter copper sheet cut through that hole, and this will be the loop for the ring that is actually going to be the attaching ring of the lid. So, drill the hole. So we have the holes. Let's make the loop. We first just fold the brass sheet over the mandrel, which is exactly the same material as what we are going to use for the ring. We squeeze it with pliers. Then we cut what is not necessary, leaving just, let's say, 0.5 centimeter tail for the ring. And we push it through the hole. And with leaving the future material of the ring in the loop, we are just going to open it on the other side so the two tails will hold the ring perfectly. It is that easy. And it's ready. If it's necessary, just grind a bit from the horn. And if you did your job well, then you're gonna have a nice fit. Like this. Now let's make the top completely flat. And now I'm going to make these nice little notches for decoration. The distance between the notches will be 2 centimeters. I think it looks quite nice. Now I'm going to make the top of the lid, which is slightly concave, and it is a bit larger than the circumference or the diameter of the outer edge of the band. So the metal sheet I'm going to use is a 1 millimeter copper sheet. Be careful to leave a bit more material, let's say around 3 millimeters all around the circumference, because you will need it for fine tuning and for soldering. Now first I'm going to round the edges, and then I'm going to hammer it to concave. For hammering the concave form into the lid, I use the largest doming punch I found in my wife's jeweler tools. Always start from the center, so you can allow the material to stretch. Now it is slightly concave. Now let's get rid of those hammering marks. Now the hammering marks are removed. Now I will polish it because later it will be much harder. The inner side is not entirely flat, so we have to play with it to find the right position for the ring where we are going to solder it. Of course, the solder will solve a lot of problems. And we mark it to return to the same position next time. Okay. Let's make the spout, which will be made from 0.5 millimeter copper sheet. And I made a mandrel for this, which will be my guide for rolling it. So first I made a sample from paper that I will be using as a pattern for the brass sheet. It should be something like this. That's a pattern.
The material for the spout will be cut from 0.5 millimeter brass sheet.
And then we start rolling the sheet on the mandrel, which is not easy. But not impossible. Now I have the spout. I'm going to drill now the hole on the top of the lid now.
The hole is drilled in steps, increasing the diameter of the drill bit. From 12 millimeters, the hole is opened up to 14 millimeters with a file.
Now the filing of the hole is ready. Let's insert the spout. It's a nice snug fit. On the bottom of the top plate, the spout should only protrude, let's say, 1 or 2 millimeters. Otherwise, you will not be able to measure the last drops of powder from your flask. Now I have nearly all the parts ready for the assembly and for the soldering, but I will still need one more part, which is, let's say, a 2, 3 or 4 millimeter thick piece of 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter brass block that I will have to solder to the bottom of the plate where the axis of the key will be. If I don't do it, then the plate is so thin, it's only 1 millimeter, let's not forget that it will be quite loose. So we will need that definitely. And this is a little copper block that I'm going to solder into the place of the axis. Now the 4 parts are ready, which means that we can solder. But before that, I'm going to drill the hole of the axis, just to be a guide where to place this block on the other side of the plate.
Before soldering, I cleaned the surfaces and sanded them a bit. Next step is covering the surfaces to be soldered with soldering water. The solder I'm using is normal, non-lead based soft solder.
Now comes the interesting part, soldering.
Now it is time to grind the edge of the top of the lid to be flush with the side bend.
So the lid turned out well after some grinding and polishing, and I really have to say that the soldering is perfect on the outside, but not on the inside, because I was using this tool for soldering. This is a propane torch that my wife is using for making jewelry. What I usually use is this one. This one is much better. It is providing much more heat with 1 bottle of oxygen and 1 bottle of propane gas. But my oxygen tank is out, and it was the 1st of January when you cannot replace it. So this is why I use this one, which technically cannot provide that much heat that is necessary for nicely soldering it. So I had to use much more solder than usual, which I milled out. So which means that now the outer and the inner surface are okay for continuing the work. So that's how it looks like now. It will get 1 more polish before finishing. And you can see the inside is, well, I wouldn't say it is bad, but it's really not nice. But it is hidden. By the way, the fit is quite good. It is held in place very well with friction. Let's make the valve, and I'm going to start with making the key. Now this is for the material of the key. This is 3 millimeter thick brass plate that used to be the front plate of a lock. What we need is around 4 centimeters of material, and here we have 4.1, 4.2, which should be enough. Now what we need here is a long axis around 3 millimeter wide. Like this. And at the bottom we need a thicker part that should be around 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter square. And now we start cutting.
The final dimensions are reached with filing.
So this is how it will be, but as the top is concave, I will have to bend it a bit. But before that, I will make the decorative notches for the part where the axis will be. Here. We start with marking the places. And then we file again. And there you go, the decoration is ready. Now it is time to bend it to shape, and we don't need too much curve, just a very, very little. Let's check it. And it is just perfect. It is just perfect. We don't need more. But the original key has a ring on the tail that helps opening. Now I will make that from 3 millimeter brass wire. And while I make that, I will also make the rings for securing the flask on the strap as well, so which means I will altogether need 3 rings. Let me show you how I do it. So I have a proper size steel mandrel here, and I'm going to twist the brass wire around it while I'm heating it.
After removing it from the mandrel, we just cut it in the center with a saw.
And there you go, we have our nice little rings. Now I will just straighten it, so the two ends will meet in the center, like this, and I will just file a flat surface here, so the solder can catch it on a larger area. And it is ready for soldering. I will add some soldering liquid to the end. Place the ring on the right position. Just some fine adjustment. Okay. And we put some solder on top. Let's put some more to the back as well. A bit of adjustment. And let's solder. The soldering was successful. Now it will need just a bit of filing and polishing, and it will be ready. So we have a key now ready for making the place for the axis. Let's drill the hole. The drill bit I'm using is 3.5 millimeter. Now all I have to do is filing a square here. Let's make the axis. Now it is time to drill the hole on the top of the lid, which will be 4 millimeter. This will be the diameter of the axis. First I will start with a smaller bit. The next step is to turn the axis, which will be made from a brass rod. That's a 10 millimeter brass rod. I will have to turn a 5 millimeter part. That will be the square part that is going to attach to the key. And on the bottom, it will be 4 millimeters. And at the end, the 4 millimeters will be taken down with a square shape as well, because that's where the closing plate of the valve will come. Now I will file the square shape at the end.
caring for the 90 degree, otherwise it won't have a nice fit.
We are getting there, but I still have to file a bit from the material, but it must be a tight fit. So it seems like it's ready. And this protruding part that will be hammered flat, just like a bolt, that will hold it in place.
Now I'm going to turn the rest of the axis to 4 millimeters.
I don't want the axis to be loose, so I'm finishing the hole, the last 1/10 of a millimeter, by file. So it will not wobble. And here we go, the first assembly of the key with the lid. Axis has a nice fit. And on top, there goes the key. Voila. And now I will fix the key to the axis just by hammering the top part flat. There you go. There you go. It is nice and tight. But the bottom of the axis also deformed a bit, which I will have to fix. And here is the result. It does not move at all. Does not move at all. While it moves freely in the other direction, it is starting to look like the one from the Mary Rose. Let's make the closing plate of the valve, which will be cut from 0.7 millimeter brass sheet, which is easy to bend because I will have to make a step in it, and it is easy to cut with scissors. Let's bend it. Now the plate is cut to shape, but now I have to file it to be round, nice and round. And it's ready for drilling. So this is how it is going to work. I put the key into closed position, so this is the closed position, and I will just place the closing plate on the top, holding it by the finger just to test how it will actually work. So in closed position, it is entirely covering the back of the spout. When I open it, it will turn a few degrees, let's say 30 degrees. It cannot jump from the end of the spout, otherwise your valve can be jammed, but this one will be okay. And when you close, it gets back to the normal position. Now I will mark the position of the axis. Like that. Now I will drill the hole for the axis, which will start with 3.5 millimeters, and I will file it to exactly 4 to have a snug fit here as well. And this is what we are after. It has a nice tight fit. Let's make an assembly test. Key is in place. Just as the closing plate. And here's how it opens. Ta-da!
Thanks to the Museum of Mary Rose, we also have an image about the internal mechanism that they shared on their X page, formerly known as Twitter. The image shows a stepped closing plate and a coil spring made from brass alloy anchored to the lid with soldering.
Understanding how the system works is not easy if you just see the video about its production, so I asked my very well paid design team to make you a working model. Now let me show you how this actually works. Now what you see here, ladies and gentlemen, is the 1 week work of the capandball design team, and they made an excellent job. Look at how beautiful it is. So this is the simulation of the lid. This is the spout. We have the opening for the spout at the back, and this is the hole for the axis of the key. And this little nail here is going to be the second anchoring point for the coil spring. Now, when we insert the key, you can see that it is obstructed in one direction by the spout itself. So this is the movement that we are going to do with our thumb when we are opening the valve. Now, let's insert the spring. The spring itself is currently made from brass. You can see that both ends are folded. They will help the securing it to the anchoring points. But the one that I'm going to use is actually will be made from steel because it is much stronger. So be careful with the direction, because when you open the key, it must tighten the spring. So if it's in the other direction, then it won't work. So first we do place the spring into its place, okay, like that, and then we anchor the second point on the pin. Like that. Okay, I will just use this nail to indicate the position of the closing plate so you can see it better. So when I push the key with my thumb, the spring pulls it back, because when I push it, you can see that the coil spring is actually compressing and it's moving the closing plate back to position. How beautiful it is, huh? And functional. Now my next job is to make a spring for the valve, but this time I will be lazy. So what I did, I stole a toy car from my son. You know, this is the one that you pull back and it goes forward, and I removed the coil spring. This is what I'm going to use. I could make the spring, but I'm lazier than that. The original was made from bronze, but I prefer the ones that are made from steel. And in fact, we have sources that tells us that steel springs were also used. So this is what my choice is. I will start the process with drilling a hole to the axis of the key. We mark it. The diameter of the hole will be 1.5 millimeter.
Later I opened up this hole to an oval shape, so it accepted the weight of the coil spring sheet.
And then we will just insert the end of the spring into the opening that we just created, after of course inserting the axis to its place. So now we have a spring that is probably close to the size that I need. It is cut to the exact size that I need. Now I will need another anchoring point, which will be the other end of the coil spring, which will be a little piece of brass with a 1.5 millimeter hole in the center and with a little nail, a steel nail in the center. Now this will be my other anchoring point. I will have to solder this inside to the bottom of the lid.
Let's cut the head of the nail. And that's it. The other end of the spring is anchored on the nail. Let's give it another turn so it will be stronger a bit. Let's try it with the closing plate as well.
So now I'm ready for the last soldering. I just cut a little groove in the top of the axis so the solder will grab it more easily. But I will have to be very, very careful so the solder stays on the upper surface of the closing plate. And ladies and gentlemen, the lid is ready. It closes well. I'm satisfied. Now it is time for the last element, the ring. You remember that I already made this ring. So let's put the last part on the lid. Like that. and we just bend it in place. It's ready. And this is the first time when I'm attaching the lid to the horn. Fits well and works well. But I'm still not ready because I still need one band here that will attach to the strap. Let's make it.
The same kind of band is visible on the tapestries about the Battle of Pavia, but also the wreck of the Mary Rose provided such items as well.
You're quite lucky if your wife is a jeweler. Okay, let's make the holder for the ring. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last magical touch. The ring is ready and it fits nicely in place. And the flask, this early 16th century flask, is ready for action. I'm happy.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and support us on patreon.com/capandball. Until next time, stay cool and keep your powder dry.